Welcome back, everybody, to the Open Water webinar series. My name is Chris Albrecht. I am your host, but I'm not important because I am talking with two fantastic people today. We have Gita Sadeh and Roya Shariat, and we're going to talk today about a couple of things. One is just sort of like intergenerational. Well, I should say that they are mother and daughter, right? So that's one. There's one aspect to this, and they together have written a cookbook called Maman and Me. And it is all about combining stories and food recipes and family and culture and everything in all together. So we are super excited about that. But it's also going to be a talk about sort of intergenerational work, right? And we have an added layer, which is like working with your family. And we're going to dig into that too, because that I am sure has its own set of quirks. But first, Gita, and I'll start with you, Gita, and then we'll move on to Roya. If you could just tell me a little bit about Maman and Me. What was the impetus for the cookbook? What is the cookbook about? Share that a little bit with us, please.
As long as I remember, I love to cook, and that was one of my passion. And I was, until 5 years ago, a stay-home mom and did all the cooking, prepping, buying, cutting, chopping. And it was something simple because my children, they grow up by watching me, doing everything myself, even taking them to a grocery store to find a special stuff for Persian cooking, going to Indian store, going to Korean store, different part of the city. And they were involved, but for me to keep them safe, to keep them to myself, I came up with baking and cooking. So it was the way to engage them. The thinking for me, mentality was to keep them safe and to keep them healthy. That was the thing, cooking. Then after COVID, I'm telling everybody COVID wasn't that bad because Roya was living in New York at that time, and now she is living in New York. She came and stayed with us. That triggered every day I have to come out to make something good, yummy, not only for Roya, I have 3 older daughters too, for them to keep them again safe. More vitamin, more good food. So Roya, sneaky Roya, sitting in the dining room and kitchen is over there watching me without telling me, videotaping the cooking, the putting food in the container. Then she started TikTok, then what was it? Instagram. Then after that, other people, when they saw the clicking between me and Roya, the bonding we have together, and started asking questions. And that was the starting point for both of us.
All right, that is wonderful. Roya, sorry, my light went out. I'm not sure why it did that. I'm not sure what happened. I think my power might have just gone out. So we will see. Hopefully this doesn't derail us too much. But all right, Roya, turning over to you, can you tell us a little bit just about the book itself? What is Maman and Me? If people were to go buy it, and we will provide a link for people to do so, what can they expect?
Thank you. Maman and Me is a
There it
celebration.
is.
Beautifully on display. Thank you, Mom/Vanna White. Maman and Me is a celebration of Iranian American cooking and cooking in the diaspora. When you're an immigrant, you have to be scrappy in all senses of that word, even when you're in the kitchen. So learning that we couldn't find samosa wrappers in the grocery store, we turned to wonton wrappers. That recipe is in there. We have our favorite after-school snack, our chips and yogurt dip. I think it's Iranian cuisine like you have not seen it before because it is not all of the polished stews and braises or kebabs or the foods that are so closely associated in the West with Iran, but it's the food we eat at home and the food we love and the food that feels like home and tastes like home to us. And it's through my mother's recipes trying to immortalize this piece of connection I have to my Iranian heritage.
Okay, so actually, I want to take just like a quick side detour.
Yeah.
What's the difference then? So I'm someone who's not well versed in Iranian cuisine.
Yeah.
So tell me, what would be a difference that someone could expect in looking at this cookbook, right? Like you mentioned stews and braises and other kinds of things. But
Yeah.
what is sort of the typical Iranian fare that pop to mind for people?
I
And
think
then how did you put your sort of different spin on it?
in the West, if you've encountered Iranian food at a high level, like our equivalent of fast food would be kebab, like rice and kebab, meat and chicken. Meat was grilled on a skewer over fire. There's some rice, there's a tomato. That's like typical Iranian food in the way that a typical American food might be like hamburger and French fries. There's a stovetop kebab recipe in this book, but there is nothing grilled. There's nothing like any of that. There is the food that we make when we want breakfast for dinner, which is scrambled eggs with tomatoes. There's orange cardamom French toast, which was how we took an American classic and brought an Iranian twist to it. It is a mix of the Iranian recipes made a bit more accessible, some of them are authentic as is and kind of stay true to the roots. And then some of those American inspired dishes that we brought our own flavor to make it taste more like home.
All right. So whose idea was it to make a cookbook?
I mean, you always wanted to write one, but I feel like
I am a teacher,
yeah.
Okay.
language and culture, teaching Farsi language. My dad was a teacher, aunt, uncle, everybody. That was my dream, to write a book for young children here learning the second language. Farsi right now is second language for them. They were born here, brought up here, and that was back of my mind. But I'm old mama is not good with technology, always saying that. Everybody knows that. Roya came to help, always helping me with whatever I couldn't do it. Then she came out, uh, especially during the Persian New Year, springtime. I was baking and I was asking them to measure the flour, sugar, everything. And they were involved, not only involved, they became familiar with the taste, with the smell. So many smell cardamom. You might not like it, but as Iranian, Persian, they like the saffron, cardamom, so many things. Then she became involved with the cooking, with the baking. And the idea, I'm gonna give credit to Roya. Roya was the main force behind it. And my main help, Roya, was that.
But you
That's
had
lovely. Oh,
all of the knowledge was up here. It was in her head. It was not written down anywhere. All of the recipes, all of that done by instinct and done with love. And so getting her to use measuring cups and actually writing the recipes, that was a whole nother challenge.
yeah. You
It's
can't
the
just go
hardest.
to taste.
Pinch of
Uh,
salt,
yeah.
pepper.
Yeah. Need a little bit more, need more specific than that.
Yeah.
Roya, you are actually, I want to talk to a little bit here about, you are actually like already, we'll call you a food influencer. I'm sorry, I don't have a different term from that, but you're very active online, right? In the food. Tell us a little bit about your take on food influencing. Again, I apologize for the term.
No, there's no better word.
And then why you went with a traditional book, like a cookbook, instead of something more digital, we'll just say.
Yeah, it's a good question. Probably maybe because, as she says, old mama is not good with technology. But it's funny also, Mom, that you said that, because our audience is people in technology predominantly who are older, but who are pivoting into different careers. So maybe someone will exchange lessons for you for your recipes. But to answer your question, I think why should I start with the why cookbook slash food influencing? I started doing for selfish reasons. I was home with my family during the pandemic. It was a rare bit of time that I got with my parents, and I wanted to just capture my mom's cooking for myself and have something to look back on. One thing led to another after a couple videos on TikTok, and one went viral. And then every subsequent video seemed to go viral as well. And people were asking, your mom needs to cook for us. Can you adopt me? Can you give us recipes? Can you write a
My
cookbook?
mom, not your mom. They
Yeah,
were
yeah. Anytime I
yeah.
wrote my mom, they'd be like, "That's our mom." Like the commenters would correct me. So that's where it started on TikTok. I started an Instagram page, which also grew to over 100,000 followers. TikTok were closer to 200K. That gave me the confidence and conviction to think that, okay, maybe a book is something other people want to read. I always thought of it as something I would just do for myself to be able to replicate my mom's cooking. Then in talking to other first generation young people, people of all ages, it was their family's cooking that they missed the most. And people often regretted, oh, by the time my uncle passed, who was the cook in our family, by the time I lost my father, those recipes were gone and now I have nothing and nothing will ever compare. I never wanted to get to that point. So I was already working on writing those recipes and then got to team up with my mom on this. To your second question about why a cookbook and why not more digital, I'm a cookbook reader. I'm a voracious reader. I think it's a beautiful medium. It's a traditional medium and a much harder medium. But for me, I needed to solidify this work into something that felt tangible and physical. I think a food blog is an interesting idea, but I feel like I am best at telling stories, and those stories are best conveyed through a book. A blog's not off the books for the future, but I felt like we had enough. There was enough of a story there that it needed to be in this physical form.
Gita, Roya brought up an interesting point, which is you've been a teacher and then you sort of pivoted now into this sort of role as cookbook author, and you are an influencer in your own right.
And she's still teaching. She teaches preschoolers.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go. See, that's great. When you were thinking, was a cookbook something that you had always sort of had in the back of your mind, or was it something that you had never thought about until Roya sort of, we'll say, nudged you into it? Or where did that sort of rank on the things that you wanted to achieve?
That was my dream, back of my mind, but I kept it for so long because I wouldn't dare. I couldn't do it. When the idea came, Roya said, I was just yelling, screaming, dancing. I was so happy. And without Roya, I couldn't have done it. Without her help and without her love and dedication and motivation, she was the one who started that. And I have to say, my husband and my two daughters, my son-in-law, everyone. It's not, for me, it's not only Gita and Roya, the whole family, all of us, we were involved in that. And the legacy that I'm not going to say I, leave it behind. It's not about me, not about Roya. The pictures, so many pictures you see in that cookbook, the spread, the bowl, everything. My brother-in-law passed away a couple of years ago. They brought that for us from Iran, or something. My mom brought it, and they are gone. But with that cookbook, I think we are gonna, for me, keeping the memories of them, the good memory I have. And every time I went back to my country, I went to Iran, I brought something that had significance for me as a child growing up. And I told Roya and her sister stories about that bowl you see, or that teapot. That teapot, my dad used to make tea and bring it to my mom, or anything. Every page of that book, it's not only about recipe, it's about keeping the good memories and keeping and giving it to my daughters and sharing it with the whole world, because we have been in so many places and so many people. They were happy to have the book. And every time I was describing, it's not about the Tadic, only the Tadic and the cross. It's about this one. I brought that copper pot from Iran, or that one, my mom gave it to me. Everything in this book has its own story. I hope for future, each one of these, Roya could write something, add to this book, the stories behind that.
Yeah, get on it, Roya. Come on.
Yeah, I guess we have book number 2, the stories behind the stories.
So I want to ask what might be a delicate question here, which is, I have a 13-year-old son, and if he were and I were to collaborate on something, now granted, he's 13, very much a teenager, but we would definitely butt heads over things and get nothing done at all, because it would just be like, oh, why are you doing it that way? No, what are you doing that way for? So I'm wondering, were you able to now some of that is familial, some of that is intergenerational, right? Like, did that sort of come up, or did you each have sort of your role, right, that you were sort of able to work through those pretty easily?
It
Roy,
definitely
I'll put you on the spot and ask you.
of course. I think it came up. I feel like My mom has had 6 decades of doing her thing her way, and then I come in and I'm like, you need to use measuring spoons and cups. And I want you to like count how many minutes you're simmering it and at what heat. And like for someone whose process is totally, she's in her flow, she knows what she's doing. I came in with all of these rules and restrictions, and there was so much friction in getting my mom to use like a tablespoon measuring, like just for anything but baking, forget about it. But we eventually got there, and it involved arguing and forcing, and she'd look at this, she'd be like, "Is this a tablespoon?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. You need to measure it. We can't just go with your eyeball." That was one piece. The props and the styling of the food was another. Like we had a point, I had a point of view, she had a point of view, and our photographer, of course, had a point of view. And having to navigate all three of our perspectives and personalities was another challenge. And then as something as simple as figuring out what recipes to include and what not to include, we had a limited set. Cookbooks range from like 60 to 80 some recipes. We landed in the middle around 76, 77 recipes. But there are some that we still think about. There's a food we eat and we're like, oh man, we should have included this. Or man, why did we put this one? We should have done this instead. So I feel like those were a few of the things that were tough to navigate from our own personalities, preferences, generational differences. Mom was I think, brilliant plater and the knower of all the recipes, keeper of knowledge and stylists, and then or prop stylist. I was the food stylist and the writer, transcribing everything, and the person pushing her to use measuring spoons and cups and all of that. What do you think, Mom?
Beside measuring, every Persian
Oh
stew we
yeah.
have, it has to be combined with rice. And that was the hardest thing to tell Roya and Farah about when we have carrot stew, قرمه sabzi stew, قیمه stew. It has to be with rice. If you don't put rice in that picture, they don't count me as a cook.
And the
Got it.
publisher was like, we can just see the stew. It's okay. And mom was like, no, it's not okay. I
No,
refuse to just give you a photo of a
they
stew.
said we can compromise. You can put just a little bit rice. So I came out with a small bowl, make it circle round. Then I had nice dishes for dip, vegetable and dip. Then I came up, okay, I can put the stew in that container and the rice beside that. I can display. But they will say, no, just 2 spoons, 3 spoons. That was the hardest thing for me. And we didn't have food stylist. I have to do everything. And Roya had a spreadsheet, everything. None of these pictures, you see, even salt shaker, it's not repeated in 2 pictures. Different salt shaker or different plate, different platter, everything.
Tablecloths.
And I'm proudly, I didn't borrow. I hate to borrow stuff from friend or some other places. And since years ago, my husband complaining, you buy too much stuff, too much plate. We don't need that. And when they grow up, they say, we are not gonna use that, mommy. We don't like the pattern, everything. Now I'm happy that I kept all of those and I displayed and everything I like, the spread, the table cover, everything, it's from me and it's gonna be for them. Most of the time I didn't have enough stuff to put. Even shawl, even a scarf, I would put under the platter, and all of a sudden, both of us became food stylists too. We used our talent. We didn't have that much budget, to be honest with you. So we did everything together. But it was fun. At that moment, if I felt a kind of animosity, not good feeling between Farah, photographer, Roya, and me, I would play a song. Who let the dogs out? I would bring Roya's dog Fig, dancing, going, I don't know how to dance, but going crazy, acting like became acting like a clown. So to make them happy, to make them forget about whatever they were thinking that moment, and
Yeah.
to bring my idea on that table for taking picture. And it worked. It worked. It was good. It was fun. 2 months, 6 weeks of fun, really intense fun. Every day I have to cook 10 dishes. every Friday and Saturday. It wasn't easy. But behind the scene, my husband, my son-in-law, my daughters, they were helping us to wash it, prepare it, bring everything. It was kind of bring all the family, all of us together.
That's
The
wonderful.
bonding became stronger for us. That's
So
the message I'm telling everyone, every book signing everywhere. When they see Roya and me together, I see younger generation. When they see the closeness, the love we have to each other, they come to me. And at the end of the interview, I'm just whispering, go call your mom. Tell her you love her. Do that for me. And they are, I see their face, they are happy.
Yeah. So I want to now let's shift. I want to talk a little bit because there are probably people who will watch this who have been like, you know what? I've always wanted to do a cookbook. I'm really good at cooking, or I've got a ton of recipes, or like you, I have, family recipes that I want to capture. What are the things people don't know about making a cookbook or getting a cookbook published that people should understand? Roya, I'll start with you.
I think first question is whether you want to self-publish or whether you want to go the route of getting a book deal and finding a publisher. We did the latter. There's so many self-publishing options. I mean, there's like you could probably make a cookbook in Canva. There's a platform called Heirloom, which is really cool and really exciting. It basically is like there's different tiers of service from like I've got recipes or I want help gathering recipes and then I want to spit it out into a perfect book like a photo album creator, or I actually want a human to help me with the whole development, design, etc. High touch, low touch. That option is for anyone who wants to make their own cookbook. If you want to go the route of getting a publisher and a book deal, you have to figure out what's your angle, what's your book proposal, why do you think you want a publisher to tell this story? What does that reach and that investment kind of give you? So first question is, which route are you going to take? Second question is, like even if you weren't writing a proposal for a publisher, going through the act of like, who is this story about? Who is it for? Who's the audience? What are similar books like it on the market, and why is your book similar, and how is it different and more unique and new? Where do you envision selling the book? How do you envision promoting it? All of those questions I think are important to answer for yourself, and they're questions that a publisher will ask. And then it's thinking about, then you get into the what. So what are the recipes and what are the stories? Every recipe should have a head note, a corresponding story with context about it. You have to start thinking about cooking methods, following a style guide we had to do with our publisher. So every step must start with the vessel you're cooking in a small frying pan on medium-high heat. Crack the eggs. Like there is a very peculiar format recipes take, and you don't realize it until you're writing one for a publisher. So I'd say start with your route, the substance, and a little bit of that proposal, your who, what, where, when, why, how, and what else is like it, what is not. And then you get into the tactics of that. And then the last piece is probably photography is huge and so important in cookbooks. The best cookbooks have a photo for basically every recipe. That takes a lot of work of prepping the food, making it look good, figuring out what you want to display it against that sets it apart from the other dishes. That bit, the photography and the photo shoot my mom was referencing, was probably the most challenging and like labor intensive and taxing part of work. And the question I'd then ask for a prospective author is, do you want to do all that on your own? Do you want some help? Where are you going to enlist help, whether it's recipe writing or photography or cooking, etc.?
What can you give us? How long did it take from proposal to publication?
The proposal took me a few months. Submitting that and getting a book deal took about 2 months. From the book deal, end of December of 21, the book came out end of 2023, 2 years in the works. There's basically a year between when you submit your manuscript and when the book comes out because of the intense work of typesetting, layouts, graphic design, and then the making of a physical cookbook. They're pretty, if I like wrote a book of poetry, I could have it in probably a month or 2 months' time. Cookbooks take way, way, way longer to make, design, edit, produce, and make them look really good. So it's about a 2-year process if you go with a publisher from probably like soup to nuts, start to finish. You get that deal signed and then the book comes out. It was just under 2 years for us, which is somewhat fast. Other people take 3 to 4 years in the publishing world to work
I was
on
going to
it.
say that doesn't seem that long. Did the fact that you have or had a substantial following on TikTok,
helped.
did that really help?
It helped. And I think we're in a new era where it's not about having a cooking show per se, but if you have traction on social media, that makes your book worthy of a book deal. And that really helps say that I have an audience. I have hundreds of thousands of people watching our videos. So that should translate into sales of hundreds of thousands of cookbooks.
Gita, do you have a following? Have you since moved like fully into influencer mode and doing TikToks and Instagram
No,
reels and
I
things like
don't
that?
have TikTok. I told you, old mama is not good with technology. Every
Not
time I
being good
say,
at something doesn't mean you're not
no,
super
but I
popular
have
at it.
lots of followers. But Roya is running the TikTok, and Maman and Me. Roya is running on Instagram. My page is private, but Roya is the brain behind everything. I give the credit.
You are the
All
brains.
credit,
I'm
yeah.
just the communicator. I'm just sharing.
Gita, I'm wondering, so it seemed like the division of labor seemed to be Gita was sort of cooking everything. Roya was making sure she used tablespoons, right? But then Roya, were you sort of writing the first draft and then Gita, you would take a look at it? And so, okay, so what I'm wondering then is, how did you had all of these things in your head, right? Just the fact that you had at least 70 in your head, right, is impressive enough. But I am sure that you had already whittled it down internally to like, oh, I'm going to go from this many down to this many that we're going to put in there. How did you determine what was going to go in there? Did you want to have like a balance of, dinners and soups and sweets, or how did you approach it just as you were sort of thinking like, oh, we should include this and not this or whatever?
I love cooking, and every time my friend they come to my house, I try different recipe, and I listen to them when they say something is good, something, oh, you needed to change that, and I improvise everything. And main thing, this book mainly is my children's favorite. To be honest with you, the things during the years, not only my children, my friend. Some foods you see shrimp and rice. Everyone makes the shrimp, but for me, the maximum time for cooking shrimp, it shouldn't be more than 3 minutes, maximum. And the way shrimp cooks is so yummy, not tough, not rubbery, or other food. After so many years, more than 50 years cooking, I know some tricks how to marinate, how to cook. And when I see my children say are happy, my husband or everybody complimenting, then I keep the recipe here. So trial and error, what do they call it? Practicing so many times, and the food on cover page, that is everyone's favorite in our house. This is green beans and rice. So it came on a cover. We have a couple of more dishes that they love, but with some stew, Roya and my daughter, two of them, I have 3 daughters, two of them, they like carrots stew, one likes korbe sabzi. And then I said, we have to put both of it. If I put carrots stew, two are gonna be happy, and the other one, she's not gonna be happy. So we have to have korbe sabzi too. But it came to vegetarian food. I love meat. Never been vegetarian, cannot be, even though every time my doctor says you have to cut on red meat, be vegetarian. I said, not in this lifetime, maybe later. So we came out with some stew with putting mushroom instead of meat, red meat. And it was so good. And I said, I'm going to make it from now on. Never before, never done it. Then trying that, everyone, they liked it. And I'm using that mushroom as a red meat inside that stew. It was just compromising and asking my children, my husband, and some traditional food, you cannot find it here, like abgusht.
Okay.
Yeah, so many things. You can go to a store, but it's time consuming. It takes a long time to cook. So I said, this needs to be here. Time I'm not here, I'm not here. So you can go to that book, prepare all the ingredient and cook it for yourself.
And how does one get an invite to Shariat family dinner?
Anytime with open arms. You, you just tell me the time.
Don't say that, because
Time.
I will show
No.
up hungry,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to tell you this needed that. I won't be one of those people. I will just
No,
eat
I'm
it
gonna
happily.
make like restaurant for you. Everything, yeah, in
Hey,
that cookbook for you.
that's what I like to hear. All right, so we've gone through what's next for you both. It seems like you had just a really wonderful experience doing this. Oh wait, we got a question before we get into that. We got a question here. It's for Gita. It seems like you're living your next chapter being a teacher, cookbook author, and a mom to so many. For the open water community, where many members are figuring out their next chapter, what advice do you have for people who are figuring out their next steps later in life?
What do you mean? I don't get
So
it.
like for people
Question.
who have been, people, so at Open Water, we are a community of people with like decades of experience in particular fields.
Yeah.
And some of them are either trying to transition into something new or move into something new. And, it sounds like one of the things for you is that you had a really supportive family. Y'all sound like you have a lot of fun. But what advice would you have for somebody who wants to make that leap into something different?
Okay, write it down. Whatever you think, you like it, and you have the dream, desire to do it. Write it down, step by step. For me, it became cookbook. Writing down the recipes, especially they came from my mom, my grandma, everyone. I kept those recipe every time my mom came here, and uh, waiting for that moment. Roya said, and I didn't say, "Oh, mommy, I'm too old. I'm full-time teacher. I'm tired." No, I was looking for that moment to happen, and I grabbed it with open arm. Other people, I'm an immigrant mom. Life was not easy for us coming here. My husband has worked 2 shifts, and my children learning, they knew the language, but dark hair, going to a school, so many things happening at a school. For me, it's cookbook, and I have a message after this cookbook. I'm telling everyone, as an immigrant mom, as a refugee immigrant mom, I want to say, if you put your mind on something, you can achieve whatever you want, and you can be successful. For me, my children, they helped me. Roya was the force behind it. But you have friends in your life, and so many people, so many friends I have. Anytime I need help or something, they come to my help. They can find someone to help them. My uh, lack of knowledge of, I know I'm working as a teacher, working with computer, everything, but so many things, these kids do it like that. But for me, it takes a while just to find it, bring my eyeglasses, just think about it, be happy, be optimistic, be creative, and you will find someone to notice you, and someone grab your hand and help you step by step and help you to achieve your dream.
That's wonderful. So what is next for the mother and daughter duo in the world of cookbooks and cooking? Roya?
She has a very specific answer, which is going to be she wants a cooking show, but she wants it filmed in her own
In
kitchen.
my own kitchen, in my own kitchen.
Do you know what film crews are like? I'm just, that's not being derogatory, but just that's a lot of people, a lot of lighting. That's a lot of
We can do that.
you can do it. Sure. Look, I'm not going to say you can't do something. I've learned in the very brief time that I spent chatting with you that I am not going to stand in your way. And I think that you should absolutely have a cooking show. I'm just wondering where it's going to fit amidst all the pots and pans and
I don't want
salt
it
and
in
pepper shakers.
Exactly. There's too many salt and pepper shakers. One of the many objects she collects.
Because if you get a show, they'll recreate your kitchen for you.
Exactly.
they'll do it. So it's
I have beautiful kitchen, but I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to leave my husband or my children. I want them to be around me while I'm cooking, and I want to invite all one by one immigrant parents, immigrant mom. Ask them to come and join me. It's not only about my cooking, it's about their story. I want everyone to hear their story, to hear their talent, their cooking, or whatever is behind that they decided to come to this country, the hardship they have, the achievement they have. I want to have a story behind that cooking. That's my message. That is my dream. And hoping every time I say, in my own kitchen, Roya said, you can have a cooking show, but not in your own kitchen. You can dream big. It will happen.
and then, okay, so Mama Gita is going to have a cooking show.
With
I
Roya.
know.
She didn't mention a co-host. I don't want to bring that
No,
up, but Roya, it seems like you're
Roya,
getting sort of
we are good team.
squeezed out there on the side. Roya, do you have another cookbook in the works? I mean, it sounds like you left a lot on the table, pardon the pun, in the first cookbook. So is there another cookbook coming?
I think there could be another cookbook. I also have a children's book I want to write, and there's more books to come. And I think a lot of them will center around Iranian identity and family. Some will be cookbooks, some won't be, but I think more books in the future. That's what I'm hoping for.
All right. Well, Gita Sadeh and Roya Shariat are the co-authors of Maman and Me, a wonderful cookbook about family and Iranian cooking, and even some interesting substitutes like mushroom for steak that you're gonna learn about. Thank you both so much for being here today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank you
Chris.
for having us. Thank you.